This video is going to cover part B of this example inverse function for your response question. So, part B tells us to calculate and interpret f of 50 and the inverse function at the input of 50. So, I'm going to start by thinking about what this word interpret means. So, in a free response question, in math, when we're told to interpret, normally this means that we're going to return to the context of the problem. So I'm going to go back to the whatever context I was given at the beginning, in this case, crickets and temperature, and I'm going to write a full sentence. So I know I'm going to be writing a full sentence. Return to context. And most of the time, kind of a hint to get us started, when you're told to return to the context, that really means you want to pay attention to the units of the problem. So what are the units of everything going on in the question? So I'm going to do something a little bit different for today. And before I do any math, so before I actually even calculate f of 50, I'm going to think about what it actually means. So I'm going to interpret first. What is f of 50? What does it actually mean? So returning to the problem, I can see that in the original function f of x, the input x represented chirps per minute and the output represented temperature. So f of 50, therefore, is going to represent something about 50 chirps per minute. So what I'm really trying to do when I interpret is I'm trying to figure out what are the units of whatever's in the parentheses. In this case, the units are chirps per minute. So I am going to have some sort of answer, and here's how I'm going to structure my answer. Okay, let's actually start by saying, first, we have f of 50 equals, and then to calculate f of 50, I'm going to use the equation I was given for f of x. F of x equals 1/4 x plus 40. And then since 50 is my input, I'm going to input 50 in for x. I'm going to get 1/4 times 50 plus 40. And when I calculate all that out, I'm going to get 12.5 plus 40, which will give me 52.5. 52.5 as my final answer. So to connect my input here with my output, I can summarize this to say f of 50 equals 52.5. I already have figured out the units here are going to be chirps per minute. And the output, what comes out on the other side, T, is temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. So now, how am I going to write a full sentence interpreting all the math I just did? I'm going to give you kind of a structure that we're going to follow today, like a sentence starter. So first we do all the math, then I'm going to write. This indicates that when a cricket is chirping 50 times per minute, the temperature is 52.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. So I am done for f of 50. I've calculated it and I've also interpreted it. So when you are structuring your responses to these types of questions, for today at least, you're going to follow this exact same structure. So you're going to say first we have, you're going to do a math, then you're going to use the sentence starter. This indicates that when a cricket is chirping 50 times per minute, the temperature is 52.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And what we plugged in here to this part of the sentence is the input and the output, and then we just attached units to those inputs and those outputs. So this is actually really a formulaic, structured response. Is chirping 50 times per minute, temperature is 52.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we were to go through, we see that in this part of the sentence is our input, and then in this part of the sentence at the end, we put our output. So let's go through and follow the same exact structure for the inverse function. And then you guys are going to try structuring one of these responses on your own using this as a model. So for the inverse of f, first we have and I'm going to have to use my equation that I just found for the inverse function. The equation I found in part A, if you haven't watched part A of this video, you should do that first, was 4x minus 160. I'm going to plug in 50 minus 160, and I'm going to get 40 as my final answer. Or 200 minus 160, which gives me 40 as my final answer. Okay, I'm going to set up the same thing. So I have the inverse function at 50 equals 4. This time, key point here, my inputs and my outputs have switched places, because that's what an inverse function is. Your inputs and your outputs switch places. So now the 40 is actually representing the chirps per minute, so the units have switched places. And the 50 actually represents the temperature. Okay, so I just have to now follow the same sentence structure. So I'm going to say this indicates that when, okay, so let me think for a second. I remember in this sentence structure, the input comes first. So now this time my input is temperature. So I'm going to say when it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit, a cricket 40 times per minute. So I had to change the sentence a little bit because linguistically I'm switching those two things around. So I'm going to go through and just highlight all my sentence starters to make sure I've structured my answer correctly. So I have, first we have, oops, just realized that doesn't make any sense. I should have said second we have. So first we have, second we have. Glad I caught that. I did the math. Pretty sure my math is right. I set up my function notation expression, and then here's my sentence. So I have, this indicates that, okay, that looks good. And then I have when it's 50 degrees, and since that's coming first, that should be my input. a cricket chirps 40 times per minute, and that's my output. So this is really structured. For your free response practice that you're going to do on the next page, I want you to follow this exact same structure. So eventually we'll move away from this, and when we see interpret, it will be a little bit more loose in how I want you to interpret. But to start for today, this is really our first time practicing structuring a free response answer, and I want us to stick to this exact way of structuring it. So use this as your model. Go ahead and turn to the next page, and you have a brand new problem on the next page. You are going to use your model to find the inverse function, and then, most important part, calculate and interpret these two things using the same exact structure that we just used in part B for the first problem. Then, after this first attempt, you're going to have a chance to revise it with your partner. So you're going to try it independently to start, and then you'll have a chance to collaborate with your partner and make sure that you have everything in the right place before you perfect your final answer. Okay, thank you for listening. Get started on the next problem.